Hello and welcome to Houdini Character Rigging 2, brought to you by 3dbuzz.com. My name's Steve Twist, I'm the Director of Houdini Education at 3dbuzz.com, and I'll be the lead instructor throughout this training product. Now, this training product is the second of two DVDs where we're focusing on creating the rig for our goblin character and also for a skeleton. We'll discuss that in a second. And in this DVD, we're focusing on creating our central controls. That's all of the controls that are indeed yellow here in our viewport. Back in Character Rigging 1, we created the blue and red controls, our left controls and right controls for the arms and for the legs. Now, I do want to discuss the fact that here we are going to be starting out with that rig that was generated back in Character Rigging 1. If I open up the file I'll be starting with, you'll see that I will be starting with a file that already has our legs and arms in place and rigged up. This is going to be different to the start file that you'll find on the DVD. If you didn't follow along with Character Rigging 1, your start file will have all of the geometry, but it won't have this rig. If you want to have the rig that we create back in Character Rigging 1, please do join us in that training product. So your start file is actually going to, instead of looking like this with that rigging, it's going to look like this start file where we simply have the skeleton and goblin geometry. Now, the file has got that geometry organized in a number of subnets. You'll also find that the file has a folder next to it on the DVD, and that folder will have all of the BGOs in for this geometry. The file references those BGAs locally to the location of the file. That means when you copy the file off of the DVD onto the hard drive, please make sure that you also copy that folder of BGOs off into the same location so everything can reference itself properly. So this will be the start file that will be provided for those of you who didn't follow along with Character Rigging 1. For those of you who did, you'll be able to continue from the end file that you had at the end of Character Rigging 1. Now, don't worry, you will be able to follow along with the vast majority of the training in this DVD. There's only a few things you won't be able to follow along with, and really they're trivial compared to the main focus of the DVD. The things you won't be able to follow along with, you won't be able to hook up your arms and leg rig from the Character Rigging 1 DVD into the central controls we create here, because obviously you will not have those in order to hook them up. And when we promote all our parameters up to our asset, then you won't have the arms and legs to promote up their parameters. Other than that, everything else you'll be able to follow along with perfectly. Now, I do want to talk just a second about the models. The goblin character that you can see here in front of us was designed as a cartoony character, so I want to be able to enable some stretchiness for an animator if the animator wants to work with stretchiness, so we can get some stretchy limbs and stretchy spine going on with our character. We also have a skeleton character. The skeleton is designed as a more anatomically correct character that doesn't have stretchiness. So we're actually designing this rig for two purposes, and that means we need the ability to lock the stretchiness on anything that we produce that is stretchy. So we are going to be designing our rig with that in mind. Now, the goblin character was modeled by Mr. Zach Parrish of 3dbuzz.com, and the skeleton was modeled by my good friend Count Zero over at 3dbuzz.com. Both of those are fantastic models. They're available here on the DVD as BGO format files. So let's load up our final file where we can see what we will have at the end of this DVD. And I'll just talk for a second about some of the controls that we're going to produce. So you can see we are going to have an overall stretchiness parameter. If I come in and grab something that is indeed stretchy, like our shoulder controls, you can see our spine is stretching out currently, and that if we have our overall stretchiness parameter and we turn that down, that is going to restrict stretchiness so that our spine is not allowed to stretch. Let's undo. Let's reset that control back down to its default location. So we are going to be restricting stretchiness on our rig. Again, that's to facilitate setting up this rig for both our goblin character and also for that skeleton geometry as well. So we're going to start out by creating a master control, which is going to allow us to move and orient our rig as well as having uniform scale for the entire rig. And when we design the central controls for our rig, we're going to design them keeping in mind that I do want this rig to be able to be scaled uniformly. We also have a hip control that we're going to be creating. Again, orientation and position are going to be available to us. we're going to set up the spine, and the spine is going to be a stretchy spine, of course, with the ability to lock that stretchiness, controlled by our shoulder controls. So we have the ability to control the top of our spine with the shoulder controls, but also with the ability to fine-tune some spine controls. So we're going to have spine controls that allow us to adapt the curvature of our spine. Now, the interesting thing with these controls is that they are going to space out between our hips and shoulders. So if I was to grab our shoulders and move those up, you'll see they space out, but they still maintain the manual edits that we made to those controls. If I switch over to the spine tab, I can zero out those back to their default locations. We also have twist on this spine. We're going to be able to rotate round in Y. It's going to apply a twist-like rotation to our controls, but it's also going to rotate our bones in a twist-like manner. Now, an interesting point with these shoulder controls is we're actually going to be setting up both attached controls and detached controls. Currently, we're working with the attached control. That means I can move the shoulders around. If I come in and grab our hips, our shoulders are going to move attached to the hips. So whatever the hips do, the shoulders are parented under the hips. We do have the ability to blend from the attach over to a detached set of controls, and the detached set of controls are not attached to our hips. That allows us to come in, and if the animator wanted to work with motion where the hips and shoulders are completely detached, they have the ability to do that. The shoulder controls that are detached will of course follow along with the master controls, since that moves the entire rig, but we can come in here and work with our detached shoulders and they won't be affected by our hips. Now, more than just having the ability to blend back and forth between those controls, we also have the ability to come in and match one control to another. So let me actually put this in a crazy position and orientation. We can blend over to our attached control and see currently they are definitely not matching. And I can say match our attached control to the detached control. You'll see that that will promote, or rather than promote, it will generate a number of parameters for our promoted parameters for that control. And then if we blend over, you can see they are existing in the exact same space. That was matching our attached to our detached. We also can match our detached to our attached. So we can go ahead, and I'm going to zero these all back out. And this process of matching detached to attached controls and attached to detached controls, along with the whole concept of having both attached and detached controls, is going to be a fairly core point for this central control setup on our rig, because not only will our shoulder controls have attached and detached versions, our head control is going to have attached and detached versions. There's the attached version, it will move with our shoulders, but we also have a detached version there, and our eye controls will have an attached and detached version. So we can come in and move our eye controls, or we can work with each eye individually if we wish, and they also have an attached and detached version. So it's going to be a very core focus, a very core subject for this particular DVD. Now, after the head controls and eye controls are in place, the final control is going to be a belly control, designed so that if we had our goblin character, which does have a rather bulbous stomach sat out in front of him, we do now have a bone that we could, if we wanted to, capture some of this geometry at the front of the belly to that bone, and we have a control where we can come in and we can work with that control to move the belly. Now, more than that, we can also come in and simulate an animation on this control, such that any animation provided then gets an additional layer of jiggle applied. That's going to give us some overshoot on that animation and also some oscillation on that animation, giving us more of a fatty material type feel. So to demonstrate that, let me set a keyframe on our translations for the belly control at frame 1, then move this down and over for frame 49. If I go ahead and simulate that, we just wait a second for that to simulate, then bypass the jiggle, uncheck that so that we do indeed have our jiggle active, we can see that there's our bone and it's moving with some jiggle. If we were to tweak our jiggle parameters, that would give us more jiggle happening there. So we do have the ability to come in, but we can bypass that, and that means it will follow our animation rigidly, which now if I was to delete out our channels and zero that control back out, you'll see that now we don't have any jiggle on our stomach. So that is going to be all of the controls that we build in this DVD. We're then going to take a look at collapsing everything down into an asset that has a vast number of controls available. So we can take a look. We're going to have our master controls, hips, shoulders, spine and belly controls, arms. If you did follow along with character rigging 1, we will get all of those arm parameters for both the arm and the hand promoted up for both the left and right arms. We'll also deal with our legs. Again, if you followed along in character rigging 1, we've got our legs, the head controls that we're going to build, and we're also going to set up a number of display controls allowing us to turn off bones, turn on the skeleton geometry if we wish, turn on the goblin geometry, turn off the visibility of a numerous set of controls, or turn on their visibility. We're also going to work with a control level of detail parameter that allows us to introduce controls to do with various levels of detail. So a master control that works with the character as a whole, then more general overall controls, then finer controls, and then the finest level of controls. So we are going to be working with setting up a numerous set of parameters that allow us to control various display options to try and make the animator's life as easy as possible. So with that, that's an overview of where we're going to be going with this DVD. We talked a little bit about the start file you will find on the DVD compared to where I'm going to be starting from, because I am continuing this project from the end of character rigging 1. But again, I really hope that you do enjoy this training product, and with that, let's get started. Thanks a lot, everyone.